Hi, everyone. So let me get right into it. All right, I appreciate you coming in and watching the video. But this is going to be a fast 5 minutes, and what I'm going to be talking about today is going to be very dense. It's going to have a lot into it. All right. So the objective for us today is to really talk about the impacts of it, and I want you specifically to start analyzing how your diet might be impacting the ecosystem and how we can go ahead and change that. All right, so let's go ahead and jump right into it. So as a warm-up, I'm going to ask you to pause the video after I ask these questions because I'm going to have to continue moving through. But I want you to ask yourself these three questions. What were the last 3 meals you ate? Do you know where that food originated from? And generally, do you consume more produce, like vegetables and fruits, or meat? Just ask those three questions. You can pause the video. Okay, and now let's look at the history of the food we eat, right? So 200,000 years ago, 10,000 years ago, we did it just by hunter and gathering. I'm sure many of you know this. We were a very nomadic type group, humans. About 10,000 years ago, we figured out how to farm. That's where the agricultural revolution boomed. We started doing a little bit more farming practices. And up until about the 1970s, did we begin the Green Revolution, which is kind of what we are in today. And what the Green Revolution is where we are now using all these chemical fertilizers, these pesticides. Irrigation is gotten to a higher level, which is a good thing. We're using hybrid seeds, which are resistant to certain bacterias and pests, which is great because that increases food, that increases efficiency, that increases money. It also increases population and will decrease famine. But what I find fascinating is that still 1 billion people in the world are hungry and several million died of starvation. All right, so we got to ask ourselves, well, why is this happening? And when we look at our current status, there's multiple questions, once again, like I just touched on, that we got to start asking, specifically with 4 different important aspects that I'm going to highlight. All right, number one, the farming method. So how do we farm? How is that impacting us? The human health. How does how we farm impact us? Right. So the way we farm is obviously going to be correlated to the way we eat. Now, the way we farm is also, and the way we eat is also going to correlate to how the planet is doing. So that's going to correlate to planet health. And additionally, on top of that is how are we feeding ourselves? So what are we putting into our bodies? Um, when we jump ahead right to the impact, let's look at factory farming. All right, let's look at GMOs, monoculture farming. So to dig deeper into it, factory farms is a huge industrial burst right now. It's where you house a ton of different animals really close together, and it's essentially just a killing farm, which is not doing great things for the environment. I'll touch on that in a little bit. GMOs, which are genetically modified organisms, there are definitely a lot of moral implications with GMOs, just strictly discussing about the impact they might have when you put them and introduce them into an environment with non-GMOs. They could start taking advantage, and they're going to outcompete the naturally grown organisms that surround it, which could be invasive. Monoculture farming is essentially where they just plant the same thing on the same soil over and over and over again without allowing the soil to replenish itself. Uh, this has become a very negative thing when we talk about farming because you essentially just drain all the nutrients from the earth, and those nutrients have to go somewhere. And as you'll find out, as I touch on later, that they're all going into the air that we breathe. Humans. So the human impact of what we eat, right? We have to look at the additives, the sweeteners, the antibiotics that are put into our food, specifically the antibiotics that are injected into the animals for them to either have low stress or it's a high steroid to make sure that they produce more milk. Um, when we look at the impact of workers that are working in these factory farms, they have to witness the killing of animal after animal. Um, Sorry about that. So I have about 24 seconds. There will be a part 2 to this. So please click the link to the right or below. I don't know where it is for part 2. Thank you.